Hi, Fancher Creek students. This is Miss Cha. Today in language, we're going to be working on adverbs standard language standard 3.1a. Adverbs are very important in writing. Adverbs tell more information about a verb or an action word. Adverbs tell you where, when, how, and how often a verb happens. Let's take a look at our example verb here, walk. How can you walk? You can walk slowly. Where can you walk? You can walk outside. How often do you walk? Sometimes. And when can you walk? You can walk today. Okay, so we're going to be learning more about adverbs. The first set of adverbs we're working on is adverbs that tells you where. Some examples of where adverbs are outside, upstairs, below, everywhere, above, nearby, somewhere, and anywhere. Here are some pictures of what other adverbs you may come across. There's here, it can happen there, happen downstairs, it can happen underground, over, can happen under, can happen around. Our next set of adverbs we're working with is adverbs that tell you when something happens. It can happen afterwards, soon, lately, immediately, yesterday, later, recently, earlier, or before. It can happen in the morning, it can happen suddenly without notice, it can happen tonight, yesterday, or tomorrow, or today. It can happen first, next, and then finally, or it can happen right now. Our third set of adverbs we're working on is adverbs that tell you how. And these adverbs that tell you how often ends with an ly. For example, slowly, softly, you can do something gently, kindly, cheerfully, secretly, wildly, hungrily, tiredly, loudly, happily, or hopefully. So here's some picture examples. The kids are talking noisily in the hallways. She's running quickly around the track. The boy is sneakily taking the candy. The girl is sleepily walking around. And this boy is angrily stomping down the hall. So adverbs tell you how something is done as well. And adverbs are very important in our writing. It often gives us more information when we're writing and it helps improve our writing. Our next set of adverbs we're going to be learning about is adverbs that tell you how often something happens. So some examples of these is daily. I brush my teeth daily. Monthly, which means once a month. So monthly, I go out and shop for groceries. We have hourly, once, twice, bi-weekly, which is 2 times a week, annually, and yearly. So adverbs of frequency or how often something happens can be a bit confusing. So here I have a picture of what some of these words mean when they say normally or always. So here is my upside down triangle. Okay, at 100% is always. When you use the word always, you say you do it all the time. That means out of 10 days, you do it every single day. I always get up at 6 o'clock. That means every single day you're up at 6 o'clock. Okay. And then when our next one we have at 90% is usually. That means out of 10 days, you do it 9 times out of 10 days. Okay. So usually means you do it quite a bit. Normally or generally means you do it all, you do it, but not as much as maybe 8 out of 10 times instead of the, 100%. Okay. Often or frequently means you still do it more than half the time, but it's not that as much as what you would say for usually. Then we have sometimes at 50%. 50% means if you had a choice, then someone maybe out of 10, you would do it 5 times out of 10 times. Okay. Occasionally means less than 50%. This means you don't do it very often. Okay. And then we have seldom, which means you do it only a little, maybe once in a while. And rarely means hardly ever do it. That means maybe out of 10 times you'll do it 1 time. Maybe out of a month you might do it once. Okay. And then of course never is 0%. That means you don't do it at all. Okay. So adverbs for frequency tells you how often something is done. Okay. The next slide we are going to be working on some examples of adverbs in sentences. So we'll just go over to kind of help you recognize what the adverbs are by looking at the verbs and asking yourself, does it tell you when something happens, where, how, and how often. Okay, example number 1. Dex often happily plays video games on his iPad. In this case, our verb is play. So, how does he play? Where does he play? When does he play? And how often does he play? In this case, we have happily means he plays happily. So, that's how he plays. And how often does he play? He plays often, which means a lot. Okay, number 2, yesterday Kylie took the train back home safely. So, our verb is took the train, took. So, when did she take the train? How, where, and how often. And so in this case, we have her take. She took it yesterday and she took it safely. My brother screams loudly from upstairs. The verb is screamed. How did he scream? Where, when, and how often? So our words loudly tells you how he screamed and where is upstairs. Earlier, our neighbor's dogs barked noisily. The verb is barked. So when did they bark? Earlier. And how did they bark? Noisily. And our number 5, last one, my whole family will go see a movie tonight. In this sentence, the verb is go see, well, go see or see a movie. So basically, the adverb is tonight. All right, the next section, we're going to do some practice with adverbs. What I want you to do when you're reading each of these sentences is to think about what the verb is and which words tell you how something happens, when it happens, where, and how often. Okay, here's our first sentence. Tomorrow our class will need to work quietly. What is the verb in this sentence? Okay, the verb is work. So how are we going to work? When, where, and how often? Which words in this sentence do you think is the adverb? And what does it tell you? Okay? If you picked tomorrow for when and quietly for how, you are correct. Because we need to work quietly. How are we working? And when do we need to do it? Tomorrow. Okay? Here's number 2. First, our class will need to walk quickly and silently. What is the verb? The verb is walk. So, what word tells you how we need to walk and when, where, and how often? In this case, the answer is first for when it happens and how. We have 2 of them, quickly and silently. Number 3, my mom called angrily from downstairs for us to stop arguing. The main verb in here is called. So how does she call? Where did she call? When did she call? And how often? If you picked angrily for how and downstairs for where, you are correct. Because mom called from downstairs. And then how did she call? She called angrily. Number 4, the students cheerfully lined up at the door afterwards. The verb is to line up. Okay, so how do they do it? Where, when? In this case, the answer is cheerfully. They lined up cheerfully. How? Cheerfully. And where? When did they do it? Afterwards. And our last one, suddenly my best friend slipped and fell down. The verb is slipped and fell. So what words told us where if the best friend fell or slipped? When, how, and how often? Answer is suddenly for when. When did this suddenly? Where? Down. Okay. If you got all of these correct, you are a superstar. Okay. It should be super easy now that we've been going over the different ones. Just being able to recognize them would be really helpful so that it would help you when you do your writing. If you're confused, rewatch the videos. You can watch the videos as many times as you want. Otherwise, have a great day.